Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking a plunge into a concept that's, well, often misunderstood. American exceptionalism.
Or A for short.
Right, A. Now, before anyone jumps to conclusions, our sources are pretty clear. This isn't about claiming superiority or anything like that.
Not at all.
Instead, it's framed as this framework for continuous self-improvement. They call it meliorist self-governance.
Mm-hmm.
So our mission today is really to unpack how America, through this particular lens, is supposedly always striving, to bridge that gap between its highest ideals and its everyday reality. We're basing this on the material you shared with us.
Exactly. Think of A less as a single claim and more like an integrated theory. It pulls ideas from history, law, philosophy.
Okay.
And it describes this dynamic system, a system of self-correction, really. It's about how a nation tries to perpetually better itself. Our goal here is just to give you a clear, accessible overview of this pretty complex but kind of powerful idea about America's identity and, well, its purpose.
Okay, let's unpack this then. For a nation to achieve this kind of ongoing self-improvement, what are the fundamental underpinnings? Our sources mention 3 core pillars supporting this whole thing. What are they?
So the first pillar is what the sources call legal anthropology. This looks at the subjective experience of law.
Subjective experience.
Yeah, like how individuals experience it. It's driven by our deep psychological needs, for autonomy, feeling competent, and relatedness or connection. That's what really fuels individual civic engagement, according to this pillar.
Oh, okay. So it's about the human side, the individual wanting to participate and feel capable within the system. Makes sense. What's pillar number 2?
That would be historical sociology. This one highlights a recurring cycle. The sources call it centripetal oscillation.
Centripetal oscillation, like pulling towards the center.
Exactly. Think of it like a national compass, always trying to pull the country back towards its core principles, especially when things push it off course. This view sees history not just as, random events, but as a structured process. Society trying to self-correct, always aiming to realign with those founding ideals after maybe straying a bit.
Okay, a pattern of returning to core values. And the third pillar, political theology, that sounds pretty deep. What does that add?
Yeah, it explores the moral foundations, the ethical dimension of the American project. It uses an analogy, actually, like the Protestant idea of justification by faith alone.
Interesting comparison.
It suggests America's legitimacy, its moral standing, comes from its continuous striving towards its principles. Not from having a perfect track record, because, well, who does?
Right. Nobody's perfect.
The key insight here is that the ongoing pursuit is the point. That's what gives the nation its sort of moral purpose.
That idea of constant striving, that resonates. So how does this framework actually, turn these big ideas into actual progress? How does it drive change on the ground?
Well, progress in this A model is really driven by that persistent tension. The gap between the nation's ideals, what the sources call the absolute, and its current state, the real.
Okay, the ideal versus the reality.
Exactly. And these gaps, these lacunae, they aren't seen as failures. Not really. Our sources frame them as the actual engine of progress.
Oh, the engine.
Yeah, like a built-in feedback loop fueling improvement. It's the real, always trying to catch up to or meet the absolute, which itself is seen as this unchanging benchmark.
It's a very dynamic picture, isn't it? Always in motion. Now, for this kind of self-improvement culture to work, the sources talk about a specific kind of national identity being important. They call it cultural nationalism, supported by something called the populist triad.
That's right. And cultural nationalism here isn't about ethnicity or ancestry.
Okay, important distinction.
It's defined as being based on a shared commitment to political ideals and, crucially, broad participation. The populist triad, or PIE, describes 3 forces that need to be in balance for this to work well.
PIE.
Yeah. Pedagogic, that's solid civic education, ideographic shared symbol, shared identity, and economic broad participation in the market, economic opportunity.
So education, symbols, and economy.
Balanced. Balanced. When they are, things are stable. But if one leg gets too strong, like if economic forces totally dominate, it can lead to problems like, say, excessive materialism, which pulls the nation off that self-correcting course.
So if this framework is all about striving for balance and correction, how does it help us understand the political divides we see? The sources mention political chirality. What's that about?
Chirality. It's like handedness in chemistry. This model suggests disagreements often come from really fundamental ways we see the world, not just, arguing over specific policies.
Maybe rooks.
Yeah. It looks at the interplay between whether your primary focus is on groups versus individuals and whether your sort of default mode is empathy or suspicion when looking at issues. Think about debates over, like, social safety nets versus individual responsibility.
Okay.
Those often track back to these underlying perspectives. It helps us maybe understand why people disagree so strongly, not just what they disagree on.
Right. Getting at the underlying assumptions. Now, it's crucial to say E isn't presented as some utopia. Our sources are very direct about identifying key threats, things that can mess up this whole self-correction process. What are those dangers?
Yeah, definitely not utopian. The framework points to 3 big threats. First, technocratic paternalism. That's where governance gets handed over to unelected experts, which can undermine, civic self-determination, the role of the people.
Okay, rule by experts, potentially sidelining citizens.
Second, oligarchic capture. Basically, when concentrated wealth gets too much influence over political institutions, distorting the whole system away from broader interests.
Makes sense. And a third?
Atomizing individualism. This is like an extreme form of individualism where social bonds weaken, civic duty fades. You lose that shared sense of purpose needed for collective action and correction.
So these are serious roadblocks.
They are. They can really jam the gears of that self-correction mechanism.
So summing it up, as presented here, it really paints a picture of America not as some finished product, perfect or flawed, but as this ongoing dynamic project, always trying to self-improve, always in motion, trying to become, more of what its ideals say it should be.
Precisely. It's about the journey, the striving, and maybe for you, the listener, we can leave you with a thought to chew on. Considering these pillars, this engine driven by gaps and these threats, what current societal challenge do you see as the biggest lacuna or gap for America right now? And how might thinking through this A framework offer some perspective on a path forward towards that absolute